I spent 40 years sleepwalking. I woke up at 7 a.m. I drank the same coffee. I drove the same route. I sat in the same chair. I thought I was living a life, but I wasn't. I was just completing a transaction. Society gave me a script the day I was born. Be a good boy. Go to school. Get a safe job. Buy a house you can't afford. Retire. Die. I followed every instruction perfectly. And my reward for obedience? A life that belonged to everyone except me. I was the main character in a movie I didn't even write. The trap doesn't look like a cage. It looks like a corner office. It looks like a monthly paycheck. We call them golden handcuffs for a reason. They shine so bright you forget you are a prisoner. I sold my freedom for comfort. I sold my curiosity for a dental plan. I told myself, I'll do what I love once I have enough money. But enough is a horizon line. It moves away from you every time you take a step towards it. I was rich in dollars, but I was poverty-stricken in time. The most dangerous addiction in the world isn't drugs or alcohol. It is comfort. Comfort is a warm bath that feels good until it slowly boils you to death. You stay in the job you hate because it pays the bills. You stay in the city that bores you because moving is hard. You stay with friends who don't inspire you because you are scared to be lonely. Comfort kills more dreams than failure ever will. I chose the path of least resistance, and it led me to a destination of zero meaning. We accepted a deal that makes no mathematical sense. We trade 5 days of misery for 2 days of freedom. We live for the weekend. Think about that tragedy. We willingly sacrifice 71% of our existence just to get through the week. I spent decades saying, thank God it's Friday, never realizing as I was actually saying, thank God 5 days of my life were gone forever. If you are living for the weekend, you are not living. You are dying in installments. School didn't teach me how to think. It taught me how to agree. It taught me that there is one right answer, and it is in the back of the teacher's book. It rewarded me for memorizing, not for creating. I carried that fear into adulthood. I was terrified of being wrong. I was terrified of looking stupid, so I never raised my hand. I never started the business. I stayed in the lines, coloring a picture someone else drew, but I learned too late. Greatness only happens when you color on the wall. I didn't just want a good life. I wanted a better life than my neighbor. The default mode runs on comparison. I bought things I didn't need, with money I didn't have, to impress people I didn't even like. It is a race with no finish line. You run on that treadmill until you collapse, and the only prize is a garage full of expensive junk that your kids will sell for pennies when you die. Life is not a competition. Stop looking at their scoreboard and start looking at your own soul. I treated the present moment like a waiting room. I was always just passing through, on my way to some better future. I told myself, I'll be happy when I get the promotion, when I pay off the mortgage, when the kids leave home, when I retire. I spent my whole life holding my breath, waiting for the perfect moment to finally exhale. But the moment never came. The when never arrives. Life isn't what happens after you achieve your goals. Life is what is happening right now while you are making other plans. One morning, I stopped shaving mid-stroke. I wiped the steam off the glass and looked into my own eyes. Really looked. For the first time in 20 years, a cold terror washed over me. I didn't recognize the man staring back. I was a total stranger in my own bathroom. I had spent so long twisting myself into the shape society demanded, playing the role of the company man and the good provider, that I had completely forgotten who was underneath the costume. I buried the best parts of myself, the artist, the adventurer, the dreamer. They didn't fit the corporate script, so I locked them away in the basement of my soul. I called it growing up, but it was really just a slow suicide of the spirit. I pruned every branch that made me unique just so I wouldn't stand out. I spent 40 years practicing how to be boring, hoping it would be confused with being responsible. It worked. And it cost me everything worth being. The biggest lie I ever believed was that the beaten path is the safe one. I stood at that fork in the road 1,000 times. One path was dark, untamed, and unknown. The other was well lit, paved, and crowded. I always chose the light. I chose certainty over possibility. But I realized too late that certainty is the enemy of growth. By avoiding the risk of falling, I guaranteed that I would never learn how to fly. The safe path was actually the most dangerous one of all. I was terrified of silence. Silence is where the truth lives, and I didn't want to hear it. So I filled every gap. The radio in the car, the TV in the bedroom, the mindless gossip at the water cooler. I built a wall of noise to keep my own thoughts out. I couldn't sit in a room alone for 5 minutes without reaching for a distraction. I thought I was staying informed. Really, I was running away. If you have to drown out your own mind just to get through the day, you are not living, you are hiding. I had a calendar full of appointments, but a life empty of connection. We gathered at dinner parties and exchanged rehearsed lines. How is business? How are the kids? We were actors reading from cue cards, terrified of going off script. I had 100 acquaintances, but not one person who knew my fears. We polished our surfaces so we could shine for each other, but we never let anyone see the cracks. I was surrounded by smiling faces, yet I was the loneliest man in the room. I told myself I will climb that mountain when I retire. I saved every penny. I deferred every adventure. And the day I finally retired, ready to live, my doctor told me my knees couldn't handle the climb. I traded the limitless energy of my youth for the financial security of old age, only to realize I had nothing left to spend. You cannot bank life. You cannot save joy for a rainy day. It expires while I was busy preparing to live. The life I wanted to live quietly walked away. I wore my stress like a medal of honor. When people asked how I was, I always said, busy. I said it with pride. I thought being busy meant I was important. I was wrong. Being busy is often a form of laziness, lazy thinking and indiscriminate action. I was running so fast to get somewhere that I missed everywhere I actually was. I traded the magic of the moment for the blur of momentum. A busy life is not a full life, it is just a fast one. I lived my life on a stage, performing for an invisible audience. I made every major decision based on what they would think. Who was they? The neighbors, the colleagues, the vague societal collective. I spent 40 years trying to win the approval of people who weren't even watching. I realized too late that everyone else is too busy worrying about their own lines to pay attention to yours. I sacrificed my authenticity for applause that never came. I was a prisoner of other people's opinions. I spent my life climbing. I clawed my way up the corporate ladder, stepping over moments of joy to get to the next level. I believed that happiness was waiting at the summit. But when I finally reached the top, the room was empty. There was no fanfare, no sense of arrival. Just a quiet realization that I had arrived at a destination I didn't actually want. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. I won the game, but I lost the point. Would you like me to generate pot 17? I was a ghost in my own house. I sat at the dinner table every night, my body occupying a chair, but my mind was 10 miles away at the office. My daughter would tell me about her day, and I would nod at the right intervals, but I wasn't listening. I was drafting emails in my head. I was solving problems that didn't matter for people who didn't care. To my family, I was a provider, but to their hearts, I was a holograph. I learned too late that presence is the only real form of love, and I was entirely absent. I didn't just have a borrowed job, I lived a borrowed life. My opinions were the headlines I read. My dreams were the commercials I watched. My goals were the expectations placed upon me by others. I was a parrot, repeating the approved sounds of success without ever understanding the song. I wore the uniform, the right suit, the right watch, the right smile, so perfectly that I eventually forgot what I looked like underneath it. I became a carbon copy of a carbon copy, and in doing so, I erased myself completely. I stopped seeing people as human beings. I started seeing them as assets. My relationships became transactional. I didn't make friends. I'd networked. I didn't ask, who are you? I asked, what can you do for me? I built a massive contact list based on utility, not connection. And you know the painful truth about transactional relationships. When your utility drops, so do they. When I retired and lost the title, my phone stopped ringing overnight. I had thousands of contacts, but I was completely alone. I lived on an island called Someday. I knew I was on the wrong train by the time I was 30, but I stayed in my seat because I had already paid for the ticket. The cruelest trick the devil played was convincing us we have time. I lived as if I were immortal, deferring joy for a future that wasn't guaranteed. I treated time like a renewable resource. It isn't. It is a fire that burns down to the wick while you are sleeping. I woke up at 65 and realized I had slept through the best parts of the movie. Don't hit the snooze button on your existence. The alarm is already ringing and you just don't hear it yet. Wake up before the screen goes black. Someday I'll write the book. Someday I'll travel. Someday I'll tell her I love her. I treated time as if it were infinite, but someday is a disease that will take your dreams to the grave with you. It is the code word for never. I waited for the perfect conditions, not realizing that life is messy and conditions are never perfect. While I was waiting for the storm to pass, I missed the only chance I had to dance in the rain. It took me a lifetime to unlearn the lie. Success isn't a number in a bank account. Freedom isn't a Saturday. I finally stopped running. I stepped off the conveyor belt and looked at the sky. The default mode is a prison, yes, but the door was never locked. You can walk out any time. You just have to be brave enough to be misunderstood, brave enough to be weird, brave enough to live a life that makes no sense to the sleepwalkers. Don't wait until the end to break the script. I share these warnings not to scare you, but to wake you up. The system is designed to keep you asleep, but you still have a choice. I am finally leaving the default mode behind, and I am leaving a map for anyone brave enough to follow. If you are tired of sleepwalking, if you are ready to reclaim your time, your art, and your soul, then walk this path with me. Let's learn how to truly live before the clock runs out. Subscribe to Before I Go. Your real life is waiting. Don't let it expire.